Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. Glories to Prabhupada. So today we will start with the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad-gita, Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. So the chapter has 29 verses and it's divided as follows. The chapter begins with a question from Arjun in terms of, very similar to the third question that begins at the third chapter, which is better karma or gyan. And in the first five verses, 2 to 6, Krishna explains that they are the same, but karma is better because it's easier. And then in the next 6 verses, 7 to 12, Krishna explains how to execute Nishkam karma. Then 13 to 16 is an interesting aspect of the Bhagavad-gita, or this chapter, where Krishna introduces the notion of 3 doers. Who are the 3 doers in any karma, in any action? And after that, he focuses on one of the doers, which is Paramatma, Super Soul. And how to attain the Super Soul, which is an introduction to Astanga Yoga, which is a segue into the 6th chapter that is exclusively focused on Astanga Yoga. So let's start with the first verse. Arjun uvacha sannasam karmanam Krishna punaryoganam cha samshasi yat shreha etayor ekam tanme bruhi sunishitam. Arjun said, O Krishna, first of all you ask me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial? So as I noted that this was very similar to the question that Arjuna had asked in chapter 3, that Tatkim Karmani Ghore Mam. Right? He said, Krishna, why do you want to engage me in this sinful activities if you think that Gyan is better than karma? Now here the question is superficially the same, but there is also some subtle differences. Right? There, Arjun was asking for protection from karmani ghore mam, from sinful activities. Right? Here he says sannyasam karmanam Krishna. Right? So sannyas is renunciation and karmanam is activities. Right? So he's not really now concerned about sinful and non-sinful activities. He's moved to a higher stage, right? He says that which is better, karmanam or sannyasa, right? So this is at a slightly higher level, and this confusion is coming because in the third chapter, 4th chapter, verse 41, Krishna had glorified renouncing karma. Right? He says that yogi asannasta karma now. Like yoga over here stands for gyan, that by adopting gyan, you give up karma. But then in the very next verse, Krishna says, yoga mutishtata bharata, that now you perform your duty of fighting. So just in the previous verse, he is saying yoga sannyasta karma now. That by gyan you give up karma, and then he's saying therefore you should get up and perform your karma. So Arjun is confused that renunciation and engagement in activities is not simultaneously possible. Right? So this is the segue into Krishna explaining how the two relate to one another. Okay, moving on to the next verse. Verse 2. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Sannasa Karma Yogascha Nihashreyasya Karavu Bahu Tayostu Karma Sannyasat Karma Yoga Visheshyate. The personality of Godhead replied, the renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation. But of the two, work in devotion is better than the renunciation of work. So Krishna first answers in a summary way, and then he will expand on it. So here, what does Krishna say? They're both good, but Karma Yoga is better. And why? That he will explain. So, for a person who's at the situation, situated in Atma Gyan, sannyas or renunciation of work is not a fault, right? Because at Atma Gyan, there is no need for him to rely on work for any kind of purification. He's not in this danger of falling to the mind, because it's already under control. The senses are already under control. So that's why he says they're both good. Nishkam is also good because it fixes the heart in purity. But then why is one better than the other? Because the execution of Karma Yoga also includes within Gyan, right? So for one who is performing Karma Yoga, this is on a platform of Gyan. So if you remember in the previous verse, Krishna says one who sees action in inaction and inaction in action. So essentially this is the situation of inaction in action. So Gyan in karma. So the person is now not deprived of the benefits of both of them. So what is the benefits of Gyan? That it is a progressive stage. It gets one closer to the realization of one's spiritual identity. That's the benefit of Gyan. What's the benefit of karma? It is a protection. So if at the stage of Gyan, for whatever reason, one's senses wander, then if the person has already given up karma, then there is no protection for him. So practical example is, let's assume a person has taken sannyas and is at the platform of Atma Gyan, fully renounced, so there's no fault in him in taking sannyas. But having taken to sannyas because of some reason, he becomes attracted to the opposite sex. Right? We have cases of that in the scriptures. He has no protection there. There is no facility in the sannyas ashram to marry. There is no facility in sannyas ashram to associate with the opposite sex. So what does he do? He falls down. But let's look at a grahastha who is executing his household duties but with full detachment. So he's executing karma on the platform of Gyan. So he's like a sannyasi. He's at the platform of Atma Gyan. So he has full realization of the self and no attachment to the activities or the fruits. But circumstantially, if his senses wander, he gets he develops sexual urges. Within the ashram of grahastha, he can satisfy them. He does not have to fall down. Right? So the platform of karma provides the protection that the platform of Gyan does not, while it also allows the jiva to make advancement. So this is the difference in the answer that Krishna is giving here. He is not saying that karma per se is superior to Gyan, but he is saying that karma executed on the platform of Gyan is superior to just Gyan because of this ability to provide protection. Okay, and this is the concept that he will expand later on. Next verse. Gehasnetya sannyasi yo na dveshati na kankshati nirdvanda hi mahabhao sukham bandhat pramuchyate. One who neither hates nor desire the fruits of his activities, is known to be always renounced. Such a person, free from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated. O mighty armed Arjun. So this verse is talking about the detached worker, the person who is doing karma on the platform of Gyan. So in this is the understanding of the superiority of this stage. So a person is performing his actions, but with detachment is called a Nitya Sannyasi. That is always renounced. Right? It's a little bit of a counterintuitive, but understanding that the person is internally detached, and that's why the focus is on the purity of the heart. The person is called Nitya Sannyasi. He is satisfied with the Atma Gyan that he has already achieved through the process of Gyan, and then he does not nasochati na dveshati na kankshati. He's transcended the dualities that come from being situated in the bodily conception. So such a person, while executing karma, is considered to be a sannyasi, right? And Prabhupada makes the statement that this state is automatically achieved by the devotees of Krishna. So he says, knowledge that one is one in quality yet different in quantity is correct transcendental knowledge, leading one to become full in himself. Right? So this is Sambandha Gyan. So the culmination of Jnana Yoga is Atma Gyan, and the culmination of Bhakti Yoga is Sambandha Gyan. So Krishna is taking it to the next platform, that if one has the knowledge, understanding of one's own position with respect to Krishna, then obviously one has the understanding of one's own spiritual position. So devotee is automatically achieving this state. Next verse. Verse 4. Sankhya Yoga Prithau Bala Pravadanti na Panditaha Ekam Apyasthitaha Samyak Ubayor Vindate Phalam. Only the ignorant speak of devotional service, Karma Yoga, as being different from the analytical study of the material world, Sankhya. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the results of both. So Krishna at this point is essentially challenging the question of Arjuna. He says that your question is faulty, that you're asking for the difference between two things that actually do not have any difference. Right? And even though he's not directly calling Arjuna ignorant, but that's what he's saying, that only the ignorant can ask a question. It's like somebody saying, can you tell me the difference between 3 plus 4 and 4 plus 3? Right? So of course somebody can say 0, but there's no difference between the two. So the question itself is faulty. So Prabhupada says that those who do not know the ultimate end say that the purposes of Sankhya and Karma Yoga are not the same. But one who is learned knows the unifying aim in these different processes. Right? So Arjuna might say that how is my question faulty? I am asking the difference between two very different approaches, between karma and jnana. So why are you criticizing me for being ignorant? And Prabhupada says, because a person in knowledge will not only look at the process but also at the destination. And since both of them have the same destination, they are the same. And that's the symptom of a learned person. Okay, next verse. Verse 5. Yat sankhya he prapyate sthanam tad yogerapi gamyate ekam sankham cha yogam cha yah pashyati sa pashyati. One who knows that the position reached by means of analytical study can also be attained by devotional service, and who therefore sees analytical study and devotional service to be on the same level, sees things as they are. So this verse is essentially a clarification. The same point is made that why are the two processes the same? So what are the two processes? Analytical study is jnana and devotional service is karma, service. Right? So Prabhupada generally translates any kind of activity to devotional service. But also here we can understand this refers to nishkam karma. Right? So what is the commonality between jnana and nishkam karma? That they are united in aim. Both of them lead to the same platform of self-realization. Right? So Prabhupada says that factually both the processes are the same, although superficially one process appears to involve detachment and the other process appears to involve attachment. Right? Other difference is superficially one process appears to be that of inaction and the other process appears to be that of action. But one who sees that they are both united in terms of their goal sees that they are factually the same. Now, one point to be noted here is that in the beginning, I made the point that Krishna will say that karma is higher than jnana because of the reasons of protection. And here the focus seems to be on establishing parity between the two. Right? And Krishna is establishing parity, and then he will also explain the difference. Right? So he's doing a systematic job. Right? So first, like you say, what is the relationship between A and B? So then Krishna is saying how A is equal to B, and then he will say that how, because of this reason, A is a little better than B. Right? So now he's in the process of establishing that parity, that both nishkam karma and atma jnana, they are at the same level because they are united in the fact that they deliver the same result. Okay, next verse. Okay, verse 6. Sanyasastu mahabhavo dukhamaptum ayuktaha yoga yuktar munir brahma na chirena digachati. Merely renouncing all activities, yet not engaging in the devotional service of the Lord, cannot make one happy. But a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay. So as I noted that after having established parity, now Krishna is saying why one is better than another. Right? And why? Because of the difficulty in maintaining a situation of inactivity. Right? So a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service. Right? So thoughtful is basically referring to a person who is at the stage of Atma Jnana, right? Who has already understood the fact that he is not the body but the soul. From that platform, when a person engages in either bhakti or in nishkam karma, that is much better, right? So sannyas, while it is the natural position of the person who is fully self-realized, but it also gives a lot of suffering to a person who even lacks this realization a little bit. And you can understand that if a person has taken sannyas and he has little bit of desires, just a smidgen of desires, sannyas will give him suffering. Like one of the injunctions they say is that sannyasis, they should not spend too much time with grahasthas, because then they will develop the longing. Like they will go to the grahastha's house, they will see that they're living in opulence, or they will see them enjoying with their wives. So it will create those tensions in them, right? So that's the suffering in sannyas. You need to be very strongly protected. But that is not there in karma yoga, right? You can you can engage all your senses as per the injunctions of the scriptures, but because you are situated in the platform of the self, you are also protected there, right? So now Krishna is talking about the advantages of karma on the platform of Gyan as opposed to just on the platform of Gyan. Yoga yukta vishuddhatma vijitatma jitendriyaha sarva bhutatma bhutatma kurvanapi na lepyate. One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled. So, in 6 verses, from verse 7 to 12, Krishna talks about the how-to part of Nishkam Karma. Right? So, he explained the what part. That Nishkam Karma is a person who is acting on the platform of Atmagyan. And earlier we had said that Nishkam Karma results in Atmagyan. Right? So, then we were saying that Nishkam Karma is the penultimate state, the prior state for Atmagyan. This is the same Nishkam Karma that continues after the achieving the state of Atmagyan. Right? So even though the name is the same, but it is representing a higher level of maturity. And that's what Krishna has spoken already about Nishkam Karma 3 times. In chapter 2, from verse 39 to 53, in chapter 3, from verses 17 to 35, and in chapter 4, from verses 16 to 24. Now, for the 4th time, he is speaking in this chapter from verses 7 to 12. And he is speaking for emphasis to repetition, but also greater depth and different circumstances. Earlier on, I was speaking about Nishkam Karma as a way that would lead to Atmagyan. Now he is speaking about Nishkam Karma on the platform of Atmagyan. Right? So in this verse, Krishna speaks about the 3 symptoms of such a person. He says Vishuddhatma. So Vishuddhatma is a person of purified intelligence. Then Vijitatma. Vijitatma means that self-controlled, or one who has controlled the mind. And Jitendriya. Jitendriya is sense controlled. Right? So, and they are in descending order of advancement. Right? The highest is Vishuddhatma, one whose intelligence is completely purified. Slightly below that is Vijitatma, one who has been able to control the mind, and below that is Jitendriya, one who has controlled the senses. Right? So these 3 symptoms will manifest. That as the person makes progresses, he will control the senses, then he will control the mind, and then his intelligence will be purified. So one may, or Arjun may ask Krishna that this glorification that you say is Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma. So Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma means that such a person is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to this person. So Arjun may ask Krishna that you are asking me to be Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma and then kill people. So killing is not the best way to express your fondness for somebody, and vice versa is not the best way to generate affection in others, right? So the understanding of Sarva Bhutatma Bhutatma is that the person is compassionate to all souls, right? So compassion does not, like a parent out of compassion will chastise their children. In fact, if the parent do not chastise their children, that means they're not compassionate to them. They're allowing them to become wayward and fall off. A guru out of compassion will chastise the disciple. Similarly, it is actually because of the real compassion that Arjuna has for all the souls that he will engage in his own duty and also set an example for them to follow their own prescribed duties. That is real compassion. Now, in this case, the duty happens to engage in warfare, and that's Kshatriya Dharma. But the real compassion is looking at things for the ultimate benefit of the soul. And Prabhupada says that one may ask, why then was Arjuna offensive in battle to others? Wasn't he in Krishna consciousness? Arjuna was only superficially offensive. As has already been explained in the second chapter, all the assembled persons on the battlefield will continue to live individually. The soul cannot be slain. So that is one understanding, right? So now Arjuna is not looking at the soldiers, but he's looking at the souls, the fact that they are eternal. So no one is actually killed, and because Arjuna is doing his battle on by following his Kshatriya Dharma, and at a high level following the orders of Krishna, Arjuna is also not killing. So factually nobody is killing and nobody is killed. But everybody is being engaged in their own levels of purification. That is real compassion. Okay, next verse. Okay, verses 8 and 9. Neva kinchet karomiti yuktamanyata tattvavit Pashan shanvan sparshan jigran ashnan gachan swapan swashan pralapan visrajan grahanan unmishan nimishan api indriyani indyartheshu vartanta iti dharayan. A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving or opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their object and that he is aloof from them. So this verse is essentially an illustrative verse of the philosophy. Right? The point that was made is that a person in knowledge, in Atma Gyan, acts with detachment. Now, can you give me an example? So Krishna gives an example over here, and he talks about he essentially talks about the 10 senses, the 5 Gyanendriyas and the 5 Karmendriyas. Right? So Prabhupada says activities such as seeing and hearing are actions of the senses meant for receiving knowledge. So these are the Gyanendriyas. Whereas moving, speaking, evacuating, etc. are senses meant for work. So this is Karmendriyas. So whether the person is engaging his Gyanendriya or Karmendriya. So essentially all the work is done through these 10 senses. So whichever way the person is working, he knows that it is only the material senses that are engaged with their objects, and thus he is engaged. So this is the conception of a person who has reached the stage of Atmagyan, right? Because he knows he is different. He knows the senses are material. He knows that the objects are material. So while he sees the senses engaging with the objects, he understands that they're separate. So you can think of it through an analogy that if a person is like maybe sitting and playing a computer game, so or a video game. So in the arcades they have those video games, where you have those controls, and then you press all the kind of controls, and a whole lot of stuff happens on the screen, right? So of course people get absorbed in the game, but for the most part they realize that all that is happening, them pressing these buttons, and because of the buttons, people are images are appearing or things are happening. These are all external. So even though I'm the cause of all of this, but it does not really involve me. If I press a button and there is a plane dropping a bomb, it doesn't mean that I'm actually the cause of this bomb being dropped. It's just the engagement of these buttons with whatever the machine is. So that's the situation of a Atmagyani performing Nishkam Karma. Right? So he realizes he is the soul. The soul is sitting in a body like a machine. And the body is like a machine, yantra. And the machine has 5 kinds of ways to get knowledge, 5 kinds of ways to manipulate. Right? And while he's sitting and watching, these 10 senses are interacting with the environment around them, but he knows that he is aloof from them. So this is a person in divine consciousness. Next verse. Verse 10. Brahmanadaya karmani sangam tyaktva karoti yaha lipyate nasa papena padmapatramivambasa. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by the sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. So the previous verse was at an engagement level. The senses are engaging. Now Krishna brings it one level higher. That activities. Ultimately, all these senses are interacting to do something. Right? So when a person sees that the senses are not engaging, or the engagement of the senses with the object is not involving him, then he also goes to the next level of performing his duty without attachment. Right? And this is again the definition of Nishkam karma. And the analogy is used that over here is as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. Right? Because the lotus leaf is floating on water, but the lotus leaf has a coating on it, because of which it always stays dry. So even though it is on the water, it is never touched by the water. Similarly, the person who has the consciousness that was described in the previous verse, when he performs his duty, because he sees the senses and the objects separate from him, he is unaffected by sinful. Now one may say that what if the person is not performing sinful activities? But sinful over here is used in the broader context, that any material activity, whether it is pious or sinful, is sinful because it is binding. Right? So Krishna says that papena. Right? So it is sinful because it results in another birth. Whether you take birth as a demigod or an animal, it's still another birth. So such a person is unaffected by all kinds of activities which have a material reaction to them. Okay, next verse. Verse 11. Kayena manasa buddhya kevalerindriyerapi yoginah karma kurvanti sangam tyaktatma shuddhaye. The yogis, abandoning attachment, act with body, mind, intelligence, and even with the senses, only for the purpose of purification. So the question might be asked that if the person is fully detached, right? If the person does not care for the fruits of the activities, then what is the need to act, right? So now Krishna is once again bringing the attention back to the purificatory effect of performing the prescribed duties. Right? So the yogi who is performing activities using body, mind, and intelligence, while being devoid of identification, he's calling that person Vishuddha Sattva, like Kevala, very, very satisfied, completely satisfied, very pure. Because that person, while he is engaged in these activities, is also fully renounced. So another aspect is brought forth over here, and I can explain this with an analogy, that supposing somebody is fond of sweets, and he controls his senses to not eat sweets. So one way is that he makes sure that there are never sweets around him. Right? I know of people who have this craving for sweet, and the way they control it is they make sure there are no sweets around them. So that is one level of sense control. The second level is that even if there are sweets around, the person does not hanker for it. That's a high level of sense control. So this is what is being glorified here. That the nature of karma is that it can result in a person developing an enjoying mentality. Aham karta, aham bhogi. Right? I am the doer, I am the enjoyer. That's the nature of karma. So one approach is, I keep it away. I keep the sweets away, I keep the karma away, I am safe. The other approach is that I am in the middle of karma. I do all my activities, but I protect myself from the debilitating aspects of karma. That's a higher platform, which is why Krishna is glorifying this stage. So Prabhupada says that when he applies everything produced of body, mind, intelligence, words, life, wealth, etc. to Krishna's service. Right? So such a person who has developed full detachment but still acts for the pleasure of Krishna and his devotees. That's a higher platform. Like one person who develops full detachment and does not act. A very elevated platform. But even more elevated than that is, he has developed full detachment, he has no need to act, but he still acts for the pleasure of Krishna. Right? And we have Prabhupada's example, that Prabhupada was fully well settled in Vrindavan. He was living in the Holy Land, reading Bhagavatam, translating, having associations with some of the most exalted Vaishnavas. Right? So he was in a very safe environment. Everywhere around him was bhakti. And then he leaves all that and comes to America, where everywhere around him there is sex and drugs and materialism. And then we see Prabhupada being passionately involved, building temples, raising money, distributing books. But higher platform because he was doing all that for the pleasure of Krishna, while his internal meditation was still the same. Right? So Prabhupada was always in Vrindavan, whether he was in New York or whether he was in San Francisco, he was always in Vrindavan in terms of his internal meditation. But externally, he was fully involved in all kinds of activities. So Prabhupada said this is the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. Okay, next verse. Verse 12. Yukt karma phalam tyaktva shantim apnoti naishtikim ayuktah kamakarena phale sakto nibhadyate. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the result of all activities to me. Whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. So this is a summary verse in which Krishna compares a person who is attached and detached. So when a person performs activity with attachment, he becomes entangled. When a person performs activity with detachment, it leads to liberation. Right? So naishtikim shantim. The person attains steady peace, which is another way of saying that he attains liberation. Whereas the karmi with desires, ayukta, he performs only out of kama karena, out of lust, and becomes bound. Prabhupada says this is the secret of Krishna consciousness, realization that there is no existence besides Krishna in the platform of peace and powerfulness, right? And so we'll stop over here, and in the next we will delve in this fascinating topic of who is the doer, who is performing the karma. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna.